Hello, everybody. My name is Abdi Lajavardi. I am the CEO of Pro Education Group. We are a consulting firm in a space of education. We've been around for the last 18 years, and we provide a variety of services to the industry. Today, I have the pleasure of having a great guest with us. Mr. Kenesco is one of wonderful friends and educators that I know. We're going to get to know his story and his journey to this point, and we'll ask him some questions about, what has made his journey so unique and successful. So Ken, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And
we're delighted to have you today. And thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know many of our audience are going to learn about you and what you have done. But let me start with this. Please bring us from early on. How did your story started? And even before you started in education, how did that, start?
Well, first and foremost, Abdi, I'm honored, and the audience needs to know that we have known each other probably for 30 plus years. There was a lapse in time when you were a commissioner, I was a commissioner with ACICS, and you with ACCS, or whatever that acronym was back then. And we not reinvented, but we found each other 30 years later, and it was great. It was a great opportunity for me to be reacquainted with you. But again, it's my pleasure. But as you mentioned, as far as going back, I came from a very small town outside of Buffalo, New York, where it doesn't snow, by the way, once in a while. But I came from a very simple life. I had a sister and my mom and dad who were married for 50 plus years. My dad came from a family of 13 people. And to be candid with you, he was forced to leave. And there's a reason I'm sharing this with you in the group. He was forced to leave school and did not receive his high school diploma. And he had to join back in the 40s, the CCC, which was called the Civilian Conservation Corps. And the reason he had to do that, they had to put food on the table for his 13 siblings and et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, my dad taught me, and one thing that I lived with, and he was my #1 mentor, by the way. But for the rest of my life, he says, Ken, you need to first and foremost take care of others and then take care of yourself in a secondary way. So he was just that type of person, very, very giving. And in fact, Abdi, to this day, and Dad's been gone for maybe 20 years, I don't think he ever had an enemy in his life. And he was just a very giving person. And as I mentioned earlier, he became my mentor, and that became my staple trait in life of giving to others before I, give to myself. So anyways, one other thing before I continue on is that before my dad died, I was the first one in our family to go to college, and that was an absolute great feel for him. That he was so proud of the fact that by the way, he went out and get his GED, but his son graduated from college, even though, he didn't have his GED, but he eventually did get it. So anyways, I just wanted to start out with that. So anyways, Dad was so proud, and I went into college, or went on to college, and I studied psychology, and I studied business, business being primary, so psychology being secondary. And then I went on to get my master's in education. Now, my first job, coincidentally, was at Bryant and Stratton in Buffalo, New York, and I was hired as an admissions counselor. Why? Because I had that trait of helping others, and the admissions counselor position was a way of helping other students go on into college. So I really didn't know what I was going to do in life. Graduating, we all have a degree, and where is it that we're going to go? And this was the absolute perfect fit for this guy because I fell in love with education. A, it gave me the opportunity to help others, and B, it was just who I needed to be. So anyways, I had that position for 3 years, and then I went on and got my master's in education, and I did some teaching. I then became the assistant dean of the business school, became the dean of the business school, I think 28 years young. And then from that point in time, became the vice president of academic affairs, and then eventually the president, and spent 17 years with Bryant and Stratton. But it was just a tremendous means or way for me to help students. As I mentioned, I fell in love with education, but after 18 years of education, I wanted to go further. And I always had the desire and dream of owning my own college. So I hooked up with somebody else that, by the way, Tom Langford, who has since passed on, was the doctor of education at Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. It doesn't make any difference, but the fact remains is that he also had this dream, and we got together and we purchased Indiana Business College, which was in Indianapolis, Indiana. It was a school of 500 students. So I left after 18 years, Bryant, went to Indianapolis, and I became the CEO, and Tom just became a silent partner. And we were very fortunate to take a school that had a great reputation, founded in 1902, and we took it from 500 students to 7,000 students in probably a 10, 15-year period of time. So anyways, after I was with Harrison, we actually rebranded. We went from Indiana Business College to Harrison. And the reason being, when I first got there, we had three programs, secretarial science, accounting, and business management. I think that was it. So those were our three disciplines. So we then, when I left and retired after 26 years in 2012, as I mentioned, we had 7,000 students and 5 schools and So it was just a tremendous journey. But the most important thing was that we were able to change the lives of, probably 2,000 graduates a year, maybe more than that. And to this day, we've got over 150,000 graduates that we've changed their lives. So what my dad taught me when I was a young buck, quote unquote, to take care of others first, and then myself secondarily, I was able to do that for that 43-year period in the field of education. So that's why I got into education.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that wonderful story with us. Ken, what do you think were maybe top 3 reasons that first attracted you to the education industry? And I know you mentioned about the main driver wanting to make a difference and giving others more before you take anything. And then, how do you see that with Harrison, when you got that? What are the 3 factors that in your assessment made the difference in growth and prosperity of the college?
Well, I think first and foremost, being an educator, a teacher, a counselor, et cetera, you're not going to make a buku of money. You're not going to make a pile of money. But the fact remains that you care about people and you want to change lives and you have a passion of doing that. That to me is a fundamental characteristic of an educator, of an educational, and that's the first thing that I did at Harrison. We identified what it is, what our objective was going to be. And secondly, we developed a culture of passion, a culture of changing lives. and a culture of giving back, and a positive mindset. Because if you don't have this positive mindset, if you don't have this positive attitude, you can be the smartest person in the world, excuse me. But if you can't communicate that and relate with your student, with your colleague, et cetera, it's just not going to work. So to be candid with you, when I first got there, I had to rid several people, maybe more than that, who didn't believe in what we as a family were going to do. So to me, it's one who's got the passion, one who wants to make the world, wants to make their communities a better place. So that was the first thing I did at Harrison. One, get them to believe in me, and secondly, to buy into the plan of how the vision was to get to be a large school, which we of course accomplished. So I had to make sure that they believed in what I believed in and what we ultimately all as a family wanted to do. Secondly, I felt very strongly that I don't know everything, Abdi, but I had to hire people that were smarter than me. And then what I had to do is I had to make certain that they could utilize me. I could be there as their coach. I could be there as their mentor, but I had to let them spread their wings and do what they were capable of doing. So A, they were smarter than me and they did a better job than me. And B, I was available to provide them direction, whatever direction it might be. And they then felt, they were enabled, and they could really do what they needed to do because of their capability of doing it. And I trusted them and they trusted me. So trust was, maybe now I think about it, trust was another factor. The other thing was inspirational. You have to hire, I'm thinking out loud here, 60 years ago, I can still tell you the name of some of my high school teachers, Mr. Frost, Mrs. Trivison, Mr. Gibbs, and it goes on and on. Those people, and I'm sure you could do the same thing and your audience could do the same thing. Those are people that left a lifelong impression to us. Why? That teacher in 7th grade, 6th grade, 3rd grade, my principal was, it'll come to me in a second. It starts with a P. It'll come to me in a second. I had just a foggy here. But anyways, Priscilla. Anyways, she was my kindergarten teacher, Priscilla Phillips, my kindergarten teacher. To this day, I can remember her, and I'm 75. That's the impression she left in me, but she cared about me. She cared about me. So that's the type of faculty, that's the type of admissions, that's the type of financial aid. People that believed in what our mission was and then could execute it in a very caring, care about me before I take care of others type scenario. So that's the second one. The other one is, I think we've got to be tough, and I think we've got to be passionate. I think we've got to be fair, but yet you're going to get what I used to call unconscious saboteurs. For whatever reason, there's going to be a small percentage of people that just don't believe in what you do, and they pretend that they do. And behind your back, they're going to call you other names, and you're going to find out from others that you have a great trust in that we don't need this teacher. We don't need this admissions rep. We don't need this fine. And we used to call them unconscious saboteurs. And that's what they did. They saboteured us. And there's a ratio out there of 11:1, and this has been proven. It's theory. For every negative person out there, it takes 11 positive people to overcome that negativity. So what we have to do is we have to rid those unconscious saboteurs and make sure that everybody was on the same page as to what our culture, et cetera, was. That was not easy, but yet it had to be done, because if you didn't do it, your whole culture would dissipate. So I think those are things that come to my mind. I'm not sure if it's one, I'm not sure if it's two, I'm not sure if it's three, But those are things that we had to change the culture and hire the right people. People would buy in and empower them, as I mentioned, by hiring smarter people, but empower them to allow them to do the job that they're capable of doing.
Thank you very much. Those, I mean, well said, well said. You referred to the fact, and you know, and it is being a commissioner, a volunteer position, and something that I'm sure you and we both, like many others, gladly served and shared our time and knowledge with others. You know, I thought maybe we can spend a little bit of time talking about the value of accreditation, and you know, you being you know, individual that have served in that capacity, and there are some people that maybe are thinking about becoming accredited, or they are accredited and sometimes they're complaining about all these regulations or conditions that they're put under. What is your perspective? How do you see the accreditation and the value for the institutions that are interested?
Yeah, well, certainly it's a good seal of quality, the good seal of approval, however you want to say it. And you can be assured that a school that has gone through an accreditation process, which is not an easy process, but you can assure that you're dealing with a quality institution. Now, once you get that accreditation, as you and I as commissioners, we go out there and evaluate these schools, you know, every 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it is. And we would make sure that what they said they were supposed to be doing, or what they're supposed to be doing and said they were doing, we then assure ourselves and assure the students that are attending these accredited schools that those standards are being met. And if those standards aren't being met, then we as commissioners have to assure ourselves that we're taking proper action, or we give that school an opportunity to come forward to us at a meeting or whatever and actually show to us what we think they're doing, which maybe is not correct, and prove to us, I shouldn't say, demonstrate to us that it is correct. And we then, at that point in time, will make a decision as to whether it's meeting the standards or if it's not meeting the standards. And if it's not meeting the standards, they're put on a probationary basis, and we give them a period of time, you know, to correct the situation. So to me, the quality, the seal of approval is what I think is important for an institution of higher learning that has been accredited by a national accrediting body, by a regional accrediting body, but that seal of approval, whatever that accrediting body is one that is the same. I say the approval is the same. I know the accreditation is a little bit different, but the approval of an institution being accredited by a school, excuse me, by a entity that itself is approved by the Department of Education is to me enough to assure that I should be going to that particular school as to somebody that's not accredited. So once again, the accrediting process, as we know, is not easy. So once that person, and I'm not saying that everybody has to be accredited. It depends on, you know, the individual school and the awarding of credentials. I mean, there are many excellent schools out there that give shorter term programs. And it's, in my opinion, it's not necessary that they have to go through a very arduous, very difficult accrediting process. And, you know, they're like, I'm still a state commissioner in Indiana, and we have 2 boards. We have one board that awards the degrees. We have another board that awards just credentials. So even though they're not accredited by a national regional accrediting body, they still have to meet certain standards from the state. And I think that's good because it doesn't allow whatever that saying is about into the chicken house, or the get in the hen house, whatever that saying is. There's an overarching body that is still monitoring and making sure that, and I'll say this, the students aren't getting ripped off, because we have had some situations in the past that students unfortunately didn't get exactly what they thought they were going to get. So it's the seal of approval, bottom line.
And part of, I think, if I may, mentoring is a big part of professional life. And we all can learn, and we should have mentors for area of expertise. And if you're going to run a school, you need to have some benchmark and an accreditation agency or a state agency or a group association give individuals an opportunity to have a network of professionals, and among those mentors and benchmarks, so they can continue improving themselves and not feel alone. So
it's a CIP, a continuous improvement program. That's basically what it is. And whether it be via the workshops that the accrediting bodies do, whether it be, on the evaluation visits, and again, it's not there in a negative way. It's there to help them learn. And if they're doing something wrong, I mean, we're not there in a punitive. We're there to make corrections for the betterment of who? The customer, the student. Bottom line.
Absolutely. Now, I had another question that deals with industry-wide. I mean, if you look at today, what are some of the challenges you see? Maybe top 3 challenges in our industry, because you hear different things from not only operators or educators, but you hear from the students. What do you think are some of the maybe top 3 challenges that, from your perspective, our industry is dealing with?
Right. Well, just like in our world today, there is a lot of information out there that is not factual information, and it's hearsay, and the same thing with our schools. And again, I am bothered, and this is just personal. I'm bothered by the fact that when I ran a school, it was a profit-making institution. And just because you run a profit entity doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. And some people, have this impression that you're running the school for the betterment of the profit. In my 42 years, every bit of the profit went back into the institution. Sure, we kept a salary like everybody else, but we're held accountable. And to me, if an organization is not making a profit, they're doing something wrong. They're not good. The quality is not there. So I really got upset personally when I was told, oh, you're one of those profit-making entities. And they have to understand that our people, our 800 employees at Harrison, for instance, all pay taxes. So we are not receiving, from, and again, I want to be real careful that I don't take shots at a community college or a not-for-profit, because all our equipment, we all know, we paid for. Our buildings, we pay for. We rent them or lease them, or we build them. So I understand the profit motive, but the profit motive doesn't go to the proprietor. Sure, just like any other employee that receives a salary. And the better you do, the more profit you make, the better the quality of the student. So that's one of the things that I just wish we could change that, but I don't think we're ever going to be able to, for whatever reason. But to me, profit is a motive of success, not a motive of a proprietor putting money into his or her pocket. So that's one thing. Now, I lost the question again. It was a challenge. It's a challenge.
Reach out. So you've asked one of them.
Yeah, I think it's not a challenge. I personally think that we from the proprietary sector do a much better job, because I've said it twice already. We identify the student as our customer. And we've got to be proud of the fact that we make a profit. We've got to be proud of the fact that when our student comes to us, I shared it with you earlier, the concept of giving back to others before you take from yourself. I think the customer service that is received by the student or whomever in our sector, in the proprietary sector, I'm being very specific, is at a much higher level than the public sector. And granted, I know there's a let me give you another example. Mitch Daniels, who was a personal friend of mine, who was at Purdue University, took on Kaplan University students. And unfortunately, the Kaplan was a profit-making entity, and he was trying to mesh the unionized not-for-profit faculty with the non-union profit-making entity. And the two sides could never get together. I think they're closer today. For whatever reason, the faculty from the not-for-profit were saying these people are inferior to us, and they're not. But this perception, and it's still maybe there, that because you're from a profit-making entity makes you a lower class instructor is totally wrong. If that anything, as we all know, the faculty members that we hire, they go through all sorts of bells and whistles and hoops to become employed. In fact, one of the high criteria of a career college is that they have a lot of experience. So if we have somebody teaching accounting, we want to make sure that that person just doesn't take from the textbook. He or she has actually run a CPA firm or run a tax firm or whatever it may be. So in some cases, to me, they're more highly qualified because that's what the student is coming to school for, to pick up, in this case, the skills of an accountant and tell me, what is it really like to be? And what are some, I don't want, I think the liberal arts courses are okay, but in our sector, the specific career courses where somebody who's teaching it has actually been there, I think is important. So that's just another, we're still fighting that today. And I other than that, but to me, whether it's a not-for-profit, whether it's a profit, the fact that a student is going on for an education, I think is so important, because to me, that is going to define whether it's a one-year certificate or whether it's a PhD. The fact that one is enhanced in a skill level or in an academic level, it's only going to make him or her a better person for society, because they have intellectually increased their ability to whatever it is that they're going to do. So I have always been an advocate in my 40 plus years of students to say, it may be a 2-year degree, and that's so be it. It may be a 4-year degree, so be it. But get some type of education. It's a life learning process. I mean, you and I at our age, we're still learning. In fact, I struggle with the world itself is so quickly changing, and a lot of it has to do with the IT, the advancing of all these technical abilities to teach, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, it's as simple as if I try to turn on Siri and I don't know how, I have to call my grandson or granddaughter to help me. It's just automatic for them because that's what they've been taught. So if anything, it's more difficult for us in the older generation to take on these skills. But guess what? If we don't take them on, we're going to be left behind in dust. So, at our age, my age, it's a life learning process, whatever that education. And I wholly endorse anybody that can pick up additional skills to do so, because it's only going to make you a better prepared, person to make for a better life for you and your family.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that you just mentioned, goes into the heart of complaint that I have heard over my career from a number of association employers. They're always uh, looking for what is missing in a skill sets or ability preparedness of graduates that they come out, and they have this feeling regardless of they come from a private school or public school, a nonprofit. They are not happy with the level of preparedness of students that they are getting as graduates, to be work ready in a sense.
Right.
Now, everybody is trying in private sector, in public sector, to close that gap.
Sure.
And yet, I go to a conference just a few weeks ago. I heard the same complaint that I heard 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It seemed like this hasn't changed. Now, obviously, maybe one part of it is because there is so much knowledge that is being generated, and there are so many different fields that are coming out, that we are advancing in, both with technology as well as, all these new fields of, opportunity, the industries that they are sparing up around us.
Right.
From your perspective, how do you see these opportunities, and how can educators, how can graduates take advantage?
Right.
How can we close this gap and turn it into a positive for us, instead of they complaining about all this gap existing? Could we look at these as opportunities?
It's
What
an
are some of the things we can?
it's an absolute opportunity, and to me, it's a division of a hard skill versus a soft skill. Employers, if I hear you correctly, are saying, look, I just want somebody to show up. I just want somebody that is interested. I just want somebody that is more, is more the soft skills of reading, or the soft skills of just communicating with me, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I'm just going to, generally say a soft skill versus a hard skill. What we did at Harrison, now this goes back years ago, but our goal, our vision was to get 100% of our students in some type of externship and internship. One way we did that is we required it in every one of our programs that they had to have X amount of hours, and it varied. Medical assisting was much more than, let's say, business management, but they actually had to experience time on the job. It gave them a better idea of what it is that they're being prepared to do. Obviously, if you're going into a medical assisting and they find out that they don't like the sight of blood, well, that's not a good situation. But so what we did is, and again, it's only one way, and this goes back a few years ago, is that the requirement of an internship where they actually practiced what they did. They actually had to show up on time. They actually had to communicate with their supervisor. They actually had to so demonstrate these soft skills of what they were not missing. So intellectually, they could have it upstairs, but if they could not take that intellectual intelligence and put it into a practical means of intelligence, they weren't connecting. So that's what we did, and it worked. It was very difficult, to be candid with you. We had to hire a lot of people just to go out there and find somebody who would take these people on for this short period of time. But that was one way we met that challenge. And I'm trying to think of another way you could meet that challenge. I'm lost right now, but it's the definition of the soft versus the hard. And
well, I can give you a hint, because you have been one of my mentors, and I can tell you having people like you in my life has made a huge difference for me. And if anything, I think anybody, graduates or any professional, we need mentors.
Yeah.
And having mentors are the easiest way for us to benchmark and improve ourselves. So
Absolutely.
I definitely appreciate that. And I remember somebody told me, and you heard this many, many times, that attitude is altitude.
Oh, it is.
So having a good attitude
Right.
goes a long way, not only for ourselves, but everybody around us.
Well, you mentioned it earlier on the mindset relative to a problem. And as you've heard me say, and others, and I've heard you say it, is that there's never a problem. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, like, the COVID, let's be frank. There were situations where people were losing jobs and their jobs were no longer around. That's a problem. But you know what? They turned it into an opportunity. They took those lemons and they made lemonade out of it. And that's where I'm at. If that's where the mentor can help you. If you're struggling with a situation, look to somebody that perhaps has been through a similar situation. Okay, here's my situation. How can I make it better? How can I make myself better? And we take that problem and we create an opportunity. And then at that point in time, what we don't want to do is we don't want to, if we trip, we don't want to trip and trip and trip and trip. You want to make sure that when you do trip, you correct the situation so you don't keep tripping down the line. But there's no question that's where a mentor or somebody, with ACICS, there was never a period of time when I went on a visit, and I'm sure you were the exact same way. If there's a situation that, this needs to be corrected, call me. Don't hesitate not to call me. And I used to get calls all the time. But guess what? We're helping people. We're helping our industry. We're making our sector better. And for the ultimate goal of the student, who is our customer. So it's just a win-win.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Ken. You are awesome.
No,
Thank you for
you're
your
fine.
time, and thank you for sharing your experience with our audience. Again, your friendship and your experience has meant a lot to me. So I am honored to have you as a friend and a colleague.
And I again, it goes both ways. I've been blessed to be on this earth almost 75 years, and I just wish that everybody would be appreciative on an hourly basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis of what we've got. And we are so opportunistic and so I just want to make sure that people do the best that they can do. When they do what they do, have fun. And if you're not having fun, please do something else that you're going to have fun doing. And the mindset of being positive and learn every day. And the important thing is that give back and make sure that you take care of others first before you take care of yourself. And the rest is easy.
Thank you. Well said. Well said.
Appreciate it. You have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.